So here I'm going to talk about a specific case of price equals marginal cost, and that's where marginal cost equals zero. And that actually comes up a lot when you talk about like digital products, things that have no cost to distribute, no cost to make an extra copy. Um, Makes it different from other types of products that have higher cost to produce, but it actually comes up a lot more recently. So it's interesting to think about it. It talks about sometimes the best price of a product should be zero, but that's hard to make money if that is true. So we know from microeconomics that uh, the optimal quantity is chosen for a competitive firm where P equals MC, and that would be right here, and that comes from the entire market. So a small firm would see where the price is set, they're a price taker, and they're going to produce exactly where P equals MC along their individual demand curve. You don't want to overproduce because costs are higher than benefits, and if you don't want to underproduce because benefits are higher than costs, right? So here's the most profitable point. Now this assumes that price is positive. Now you could have certain type of products that have low or zero marginal cost. So I'll stick to the zero marginal cost case. The thing I think about is something that has high fixed costs, but low or you could say zero variable cost. And so those are things that are hard to make one copy of, but once you have the copy, you can make a lot of extra copies for free or for cheap. So the example I always think about is that I make a movie, and once it's filmed, I could sell one copy if I'm lucky, and that could pay for those costs of making the movie. But I could use extra copies to pay off more. But the real cost was to film the film. The real cost was to make the movie. It's not to produce extra copies. Back in the day, you had film strips, and now you could have DVDs, but you could actually have like a digital copy that costs zero to the consumer, maybe has some electricity or something behind it. But really the cost of filming something, making an album, something like that, would be high fixed cost. The fixed cost is making the first copy, and it's very cheap beyond that. So that applies to things that are easily reproduced. Okay, so if variable cost and marginal cost are zero, remember total cost is fixed plus variable. So you're adding zero, total cost is fixed cost, right? Which means the average total cost, instead of having like a U shape where it starts to pick up again because of rising marginal cost, it's going to slope down towards zero. It's going to approach zero. It'll never reach it, even with a trillion copies. It'll be 0.0000 something. But you have basically a downward sloping average total cost curve that looks just like the average fixed cost curve. Okay, so how do you make a profit doing that? Well, you can't if you sell at price equals marginal cost. And now you have to think about, well, why would you want to sell at price equals marginal cost? Well, that's efficient, right? Because if you charge, you could charge a penny, right, and it's still making a penny profit, right? It's efficient to the consumer, right, and you'll get more consumers to buy it. So if you sell at a price that's too high, you'll lose consumers. So you can expand your consumer base, but you cannot make a profit doing it because remember, profit is PQ minus total cost. Price is zero. You're basically negative total cost. Okay, how do you cover those fixed costs, right? So that's what you see in real life, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is a real cost curve. I basically say $10,000. I'm making my movie cheap, and it costs $10,000 to produce. And if I sell one copy on average, right, so my AFC is here, if I sell one copy for $10,000, I make my money back. But nobody's going to do that. And so I could sell, 10,000 copies for $1, make my money back, right? And if you really go optimal, it will be free, right? So one option is I could sell 10 copies at $1,000 each, right? And you get this is my revenue box. This is, remember, AFC times Q becomes total cost. And my revenue is PQ, so this will exactly cover my cost. Okay, well, that's one option. You could see that maybe with, I've got some sort of like, donors. I find people who are sponsors, Patreon type thing. That's one way to do it. Or I could sell for $100. I could sell 100 copies for $100 each. But again, I can increase welfare because assuming my movie is popular, which is kind of a stretch. You would say, well, there's way more than 100 people who would love to see it. How can we increase their welfare? Well, you have to get more copies into more hands. So you could lower the price even further, okay? You sell 10,000 copies for $1 each. Now I've got more happy customers, and that would be down here. So this is the same box, right? Here, all the way down, this is way off screen, right? But the height is $1 and the base is 10,000. I'm going to make my money back. I could sell millions of copies for a penny each, right? I could sell, infinite copies for free, right? Assuming that there's that many people out there. But either way, quantity sold times that really low price is still going to equal $10,000. So of all those options, the one that I make my profit back either way. I make my cost back either way. But the one option that makes everybody best off is assuming my product makes people happy. More people seeing it means more happiness. So the low cost increases the quantity and makes consumers happy. Okay. So you say, well, how do you cover fixed costs? Well, I misspelled it here, but advertising. You could, have, put it, your product placement, things like that in your product. You get sponsors and so forth. You get donations. That happens a lot. Raise a certain amount crowdfunded. You put your product together. You see premium subscribers. A lot of times, for example, newspapers used to be print. You buy them. They cost money to print. They cost ink and paper. But now it's digital. People expect news to be free. Well, how do you pay the reporters and stuff? Well, if you subscribe, you get more articles, you get more content. You might have specific articles only for you. There could be a quota, right? You get 10 articles a month or something, 3 articles a month. So you might see tiers of pricing with it, and that actually gets along the demand curve. The people who really like the product will pay. You get their money. The people who don't really, read it that much they can get for less. So it's a way of price discrimination. So people are becoming more and more creative to cover those fixed costs, but it's actually a change in the industry. Okay, so if you're talking about real businesses in the digital age, you'd actually say, well, how can you actually make the product if the market wants it for free? Well, you'd have to find some way to come up with those fixed costs. You've been seeing that over the years. You'll see more and more ways where fixed costs are covered while still maintaining a price of zero. Because remember, when price equals marginal cost, that's most efficient for consumers.